First, the disclaimer. The opinions represented in this video, the facts introduced represented by opinions in this video are mine. There's no paid endorsement. There's no sponsor approval. I was never a Federal Air Marshal. I'm just very intrigued by the original Federal Air Marshal Tactical Pistol Course and all.
I'm Jim from Advanced Performance Shooting, and for longer than I can remember, I've been intrigued by the Federal Air Marshal Tactical Pistol Course. Some have described that course as the most difficult law enforcement qualification course that has ever existed. And that may have started my obsession, if you will, with that actual qualification, with the shooting requirements laid out in that qualification for a Federal Air Marshal to actually go on a mission set.
The original course of fire, approved in 1992, consisted of 30 total rounds, 7 stages of fire, divided into 13 strings, each stage repeated twice with the exception of one. Unique for a law enforcement type of qualification, the entire course of fire was shot at 7 yards from concealment and intended to be shot cold. The majority of the 30 rounds for this course of fire were fired on the middle of 3 targets, with the outside 2 targets spaced from center to center 3 yards apart. Also unique for this type of qualification, the times allowed for each string were scored very uniquely. 1.65 seconds draw to first shot, for example, but the 2 strings could not exceed 3.3 seconds total. The stages and strings were at the time what they thought represented the essential skills required of a Federal Air Marshal. The target they selected was the FBIQ target because of a surplus of those targets available to them. Any shot inside of the bottle on that FBIQ scored 5 points. Any shot that broke the line or was on the paper outside of the bottle scored 2 points, and they required 135 out of the 150 possible points to pass. If you didn't pass the qualification for any reason, any of the times or the point values, you didn't go on that particular mission set. To illustrate the accuracy requirement, I removed the area outside of the bottle target, overlaid it on a USPSA target, and then vice versa, so that you could actually see the 5-point areas and the 2-point areas. Not an extreme accuracy requirement for this qualification. In a Shooting Illustrated article in 1998, Chris Christian described when the Joint Special Operations Command Staff reviewed the Federal Air Marshal training, they described those shooters as the top 1% of pistol shooters in the world. No doubt those shooters were excellent shooters, but it was not the qualification that made them so. It was the training program. A qualification at any level is only as good as the training program that it's designed to test. From a training development standpoint, I decided to reverse engineer the qualification and the training program assigned to that particular qualification to the largest degree possible. There's way more research available to us now than was available when Tom Bowens originally created the FAM TPC. Because I very firmly believe that the essential skills required of a Federal Air Marshal are very similar to those essential skills that could be required of a concealed carry holder, I wanted to dig further into the training development side of how the FAM TPC was originally created. There's a tremendous amount of research available to us now that wasn't available then. Force Science Institute, John Hearn, John Holshin, countless universities and colleges have done sports science studies in the with very little science to go on. Tom Bowens, the original creator of the FAM TPC, queried the relevant firearms training schools popular at that time as to what their great shooters could be expected to do for each of those strings on demand, cold performance. And what I found when I compare reaction to audible, visual, biomechanical movement times, what I have found, what I believe to be true, is that the times represented in the original FAM TPC are right about what an average person, shooting skills unrelated, can perform. When we add actual shooting skill, when we look at the automaticity, and an excellent chart from John Hearn from over a decade ago that compares several different well-known qualifications and shooting exercises with the USPSA and IDPA classification system, we see that the FAM TPC falls out right about middle of the road, right about an average shooting skill level. Certainly, training to pass a specific qualification or a given drill isn't the right way to train. Rather, training should develop those required or desired skills, and then the evaluation phase becomes not only a test of the training program itself, but the individual involved. I was shocked when I saw a recent video that once again brought attention to the FAM TPC. In a segment of the video relating to pistol-mounted optics, the host stated the FAM TPC has never been passed by a shooter with an optic. Again, it's not the test, but the training program that deserves the attention. If an individual can't pass the FAM TPC minimum requirement, it's not because they utilize a pistol-mounted optic or they use iron sights. If they can't pass it with either one or both, it's because they haven't anchored those required skills to actually pass that qualification standard. On-demand, performance-based shooting isn't limited to a competitive or defensive lane, and if the FAM TPC really was the hardest law enforcement qualification, that might reflect more on how easy other qualifications actually are. Over the last several years, I continued teaching, training, researching, and taking classes to further develop what I was calling the 1 of 100 concealed carry standards. Based on our research, I altered some of the times for each individual string and overall stages to better reflect an average human performance requirement. I altered the scoring to reflect a percentage base above or below that average, and I increased the accuracy requirement. I altered the target placement and some of the strings themselves that has further developed into the deliberate responder standard. I very firmly believe that hope is not a course of action, and your training should be recent, relevant, and realistic.